Hello, my name is Abraham Klein, and at the time of this recording, it is almost 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. So, that's the standard. 8 o'clock Pacific Standard Time. And, 6 in the morning, England time. I don't know why I'm going through all that. It's dark out, except in this car and wherever there are other cars passing by. Because the electricity's out in Indiana County, and possibly parts of Westmoreland County, and who knows where all else. So, I've had time to try to catch up with some friends and on Messenger, because their electric's out too, and they can all go to sleep. I can't, because I mostly rely on a BiPAP to sleep, because it gives me oxygen so I can inhale and exhale, mostly for exhale, because that's, for some reason, my lungs are kind of dumb. They don't like to exhale, so I get all this buildup of carbon dioxide, and then I stop breathing, and it becomes a problem then, usually. I'm rambling at this point, but I was talking with a friend of mine about art, right? So he's kind of always had a passion for art, and I remember when I was a kid, and I can't say just when I was a kid, I've always kind of been into creativity, and it was actually when I was into drawing that I realized that I liked to also write, because I was really into, like, the Snoopy, Peanuts comics and stuff like that. And I remember thinking at one point, that's what I want to do. I want to draw comics. That's what I want to do in life. Because, I was about 8, 9, somewhere around there. Now, that's a good career choice. That's where the money's at. That's where the money at. And so that was sort of like my passion. I like to draw. And I thought, this is gonna be the way I go, right? And so that was a passion. And then eventually, like I said, I started writing these comics, these one-off comics. Mainly that I started writing these comics and stories, and sometimes I wouldn't have time necessarily because of school and whatnot to write these, to fully draw out all my comics. So I would start writing them down as stories, and eventually I was like, well, I kind of like this writing thing too. And eventually, although I still like to doodle, I got more into writing, and eventually I had the opportunity to, write for different publications, and now I own this, like, little small town newspaper and all that fun stuff, which is cool. But writing was also another, like, passion. And today, I have other passions too. Like, I've learned other things that I'm interested in. Obviously, there was the call to preach. That was something that became a passion due to the fact that, around 19 years old, the Lord called me into the ministry, and I started preaching, and so that obviously became a passion, and has been a passion now for, I can't believe it's been almost 14 years right now, and next year, this December's gonna be 15 years, and then something that was sort of something on the back burner most of my life, around the age of 30, became another passion, and that was being a barber. And, I wasn't sure how much I would like it, how much I would be into it, how much I would be able to figure out, because I'm not, like, super intelligent or whatever. So I got into it, realized, it's a passion I never knew I had. And today I'm, that's my main job. He's being a barber. Drawing isn't my main job. Doing cinematography, it's obviously not my main job. Video editing's not my main job. Graphic design isn't my main job. Writing's not my main job. Preaching is not my main job, which I know that's like anathema to some people in the ministry. If they couldn't do it for a living, I don't know if they would preach. But yeah, those aren't my job. That's the one thing that I do that's a job. But if there is anything that maybe this is just my problem, and maybe I'm just telling you what has been my problem historically from the time that I was a youth, or maybe it's something that perhaps, hopefully, can also help you. One thing, I always had encouragement, but not necessarily always distinct direction, if that makes any sense. Like, I was always encouraged to pursue things and stuff like that. But, like, a lot of people I knew didn't know exactly avenues. And I guess, to an extent, that's good, because it's one of those things where, yeah, say I had gone fully into the whole artistry thing and decided I wanted to draw comics, I'd probably still be starving. Or writing, probably still be starving. And, of course, the ministry, you're always going to starve there, to some extent. Yeah. If you do it right, anyway. But barbering, obviously, I'm not starving. The Lord's been very good to me. It's blessed me with the ability to be able to cut hair for a living. That is my actual job. My job is being a licensed barber manager in the state of Pennsylvania. But my whole idea, amongst all this rambling, is the fact that when I was a kid, I had this real passion for drawing. I had a real passion for writing. And I won't speak too much about my passion for preaching, because that's just something that, to an extent, yes, obviously there is there's obviously the tools of how to study the hermeneutics and the homiletics of how to present it and preach it, with the points and message structure, sermon structure, and stuff like that, which I definitely learned. But I don't really put too much stock into those physical attributes. Not to say that they're not important, but that is a passion that I personally believe is more important, from the spiritual aspect, and not so much from the carnal aspect. Which I'm not trying to use the term carnal in a negative way, but the physical, the earthly. But the other passions, right? Drawing, writing. These are things that there is a way to be a professional artist, obviously. There's schools that teach you how. Obviously, there's different methods that have been created by other artists over the years, over the millennia, right? It's obviously gone through a lot of evolution. In some ways, there's been some dilution of what some would consider art today, at least in the opinion of some of us who are not part of the higher critics group. And same can be said for writing, because I like to write. I've written a few songs, I've written some poetry and stuff like that. And the problem with passion, what I'm getting at, is that passion is great, and it's a good starting point, and it's obviously a good fuel to help you get places, at least in the beginning, for sure, right? When you have all of the potential, passion is all you have, and that's good. But there's also the standard, and I know that's a negative word. There's the rules. There are the methods of how things are done. And you have to learn how to do those things if you're going to do them correctly. Now, again, I know, art a lot of times is very subjective. Writing very often is subjective. But even some of the most, what you would call non-conventional, in like the art world and writing world, were people that at least knew how to do it correctly, even though they put their own spin on it. In fact, there's a quote from Pablo Picasso. Obviously, he was not very conventional in his style of doing art, but he said, learn the rules, and I hope I'm getting this quote correctly, learn the rules like a master, so you can break them like an artist, right? So this guy, and I don't know a whole lot about his life, but his quote is correct. There is value in following a set standard of how to do things. Yes, I get, there is your creative licensing. There are things that you pick up along the way that are just your own special touch of how to do things. And that's the case whether that be art or writing, preaching, right? If we must bring that back up again. And obviously in barbering, there's obviously things that I've used myself when it comes to things I've either figured out or used for myself as a barber. But the difference between when I learned to become a barber and when I had my passion for writing and for art was that I learned the rules. I learned the proper steps. And that's something that I heard from my teachers. That's something that I heard from my first boss. That's something I've heard from my current partner, where I work. And it's true, right? In order to truly be able to put your own spin, you need a foundation. You need a standard to follow. Because there was a time where there was no standard. There was a time where people had to figure it out. Like I said, art has evolved so much over the millennia. Writing has evolved. You take any craft, any art, any trade that is out there. These didn't just come out of the blue. These are things that through trial and error, people who put in the time and the effort, who are very serious, often out of necessity, learned a set standard of what worked, made that the way that they would teach it, and they've continued to teach it that way over the years. Now again, one size doesn't fit all in the idea that yes, everybody's going to learn to do things their own way. But if you're not willing to at least learn the proper way to do things, that is where you get yourself in trouble. Had I gone into barber school and said, yeah, that's great, I like what they're saying, but I'm going to do things my own way. I'm going to hold the straight razor the way I want to. I'm going to hold the clippers the way I want to. I'm going to do all my way. Then, first of all, what's the purpose of, essentially sinking, $20,000 into your education to go to school, and also, which obviously I guess that's where the value comes in. It's like, well, if I'm paying for it, I better learn what they're telling me, right? But also, there's the fact that, yeah, they built a foundation. And when I was in barber school, and don't let this discourage you if you're someone who's considering barber school, right? They said, we're not going to make you a perfect barber. We're giving you a foundation. You will learn to become a barber by cutting hair. What we offer you at school, at Barber School of Pittsburgh, which is where I went, is a foundation that you can use. And yes, there's other barbers that I learned from. I've got lots of friends in the barber, well, not lots of friends. There's not like there's hundreds of us out there. But I've got friends in the barber industry, and there's things I've learned from them. There's things I've figured out myself. There's things through trial and error I've been able. But I had a standard. I had a set goal. I had an actual roadmap that said, this is the way that it has been done all this time, and there's value in this. And although you may not always do it exactly the way that the standard says, it's here to show you the right way to do it. To learn it like a master, so you can break the rules. Learn the rules like a master, so you can break them like an artist. Right? Yes, there's going to be time to put your own spin, to put your own marker on whatever your passion is. But again, passion is only going to get you so far. You also have to have a standard. You have to know the rules. And it's not easy. We like to do things our own way. We like to do what we want to do. But if you're willing to take the time and the effort to not cut corners, to put in the extra mile, so to speak, to do the extra details nobody else is willing to do, that is where success happens. And I've found that to be the case in my life, right? I had a passion for drawing, but I wanted to learn to do it my own way. I like to write. And over the years, I've gotten a little bit more serious about, my spelling, my grammar, for the most part. But had I been more serious about it when I was in school, I wouldn't have to be in this position now, right? So, because for so long I wanted to do it my way. It would all be figured out later. Not a good philosophy. When I was in barber school, I learned a standard. Wasn't perfect. I didn't execute it perfect, but it laid a foundation. It laid a standard that was going to help me for my future. And that's the case for you as well. Whatever your passion is, don't let the passion lead you. At least don't let it be the only thing that guides you. If you're into welding, masonry, electricity, some sort of college degree, psychology or whatever, ministry, learn the right way to do it. And then, once you've learned it, that's when you can let the individual you shine. So, a little bit longer video, but thank you for watching. At least a way to pass the time while the electricity is out. So, thanks for watching, and you just have a great day.